Volume 3 issues directly explore the subconscious. In these episodes, I provide you with techniques to uncover your own deeper mind content, then illustrate what to look for and show you how to change. But these episodes require focus and undivided concentration. Properly applied, they deliver you deep personal insights into life and your own consciousness, beyond anything you've experienced or can find elsewhere. I suggest you only delve into Volume 3 pieces when you have the time and a quiet setting where you can focus and concentrate. Part 8 of Volume 3 pulls together techniques presented in Parts 4 through 6 with the inner mechanisms described in Part 7. This issue explains how to find and change inner negating mechanisms to improve real life. The Essence of Reality explores how the psyche which you are creates the reality you encounter. Very cool, you found the Essence of Reality, presenting a unique view of human consciousness, of your mind, and the nature of your being. We explore life's real function here well beyond the dim scope of religion and science. Those old views distort your perception of life's real flow. Insights here clarify it. You create your life's real qualities, health, success, relationships. No other source does but you. To see just how that works, well, stay tuned now and come back again. We have many a topic to cover. And of those things we cover, nothing is more important than this: finding and changing inner root elements to outer problems. Volume 3 issues all look directly at consciousness. The focus here is your own customized version of consciousness. The 8th issue of Volume 3 is a follow-up on earlier issues. Absolute best would be if you view all of them before proceeding here. In particular, you should have an introduction to the workings of the subconscious from the first 3 parts of Volume 3, and an understanding of techniques for querying your inner self from Parts 4 through 6. Most important, those are reference to Part 7, which lays out specific inner elements that correspond to outer issues. That is the focus here, primarily using self-hypnosis and ideomotor responses to find and change inner negating elements. Tom Nair here, as always, exploring consciousness. Perspectives here add to my website, my books, and many talks I've given to open-minded listeners. Indeed, this clip demos explorative techniques from The Essence of Reality, my first book, Psyche Exposed, my second, and my website. Refer to them for further details. I came to see the oneness of things through a long inner journey using the procedures laid out here. The inner-outer connection of mind with reality drives real life, yours as well as my own. Aware of that connection, you can improve real life by finding and changing inner roots to outer problems. And Volume 3 here directly addresses that clear awareness, as I call it. Specifically, we'll explore the procedure of finding and changing the subconscious. As noted in earlier videos, the subconscious contains a large, complex, often interwoven set of definitions, beliefs, and other intangible particles of information. You can picture it as a big slate with gobs of arrows connecting various things. In the life process, the whole of your psyche, the contents of that slate, becomes woven into real events and relationships, invariably and reliably. No other force or source governs your existence, though some may seem to, that is, appear to, based on your beliefs. That oneness of things, that inner-outer connection, exists whether or not you perceive it. And if you want to accomplish real improvement in life, in your health, your success, relationships, you have to delve into it to identify and release specific inner mechanisms. Otherwise, they don't go away. Once you've done that, and it may be fairly to quite complex depending on the aspect of life you're dealing with, But once you've done that, the real life situation will revise in response. In health terms, your body knows how to work right, but you interfere with it with negating mechanisms. As for personal connections, there's a right individual for you to relate to very well. But you won't find that person while inner elements negate your will and compromise your intent. Same thing, as you can succeed with tasks and projects you undertake, using your talents and making the right connections, but you won't if your inner conflict and orientation to struggle lead you down wrong pathways. The inner culprits were detailed in part 7 of this series. They include, quickly, suggestion and emulation stemming back to early impressions or even later exposure in life, identification with an ethnic group or character type, or simply with another person. That's the third mechanism of mind. A damaging pair involves early treatment. Motivation and punishment can lead to significant problems. One rewarded you for acting as you're supposed to, not as you naturally would. The other inflicted pain if you didn't follow the rules. Force from parental authority and subtle force are the inescapable situation of your childhood. They may have compromised your will as well, and will continue to until you've jettisoned them both. The eighth mechanism you'll be looking for behind real-life specific problems is a single traumatic experience. Until released, that event can plague you repeatedly, indefinitely. And the gold medal mechanisms are conflict and struggle, two values prized in a modern culture that pictures toughness and fortitude as qualities, strength as an evolutionary winner, and suffering as a sign of character. All those would be fine and dandy traits if you were separate from the world, a thing isolated who had to compete and vie with other counterforces, but you aren't. You're engaged in a subjective encounter with life. You're tied to situations that reflect your nature. Prizing and holding conflict and struggle as values will only serve to lead you into negative relationships and an inability to succeed in many of life's endeavors. So those two are biggies and likely will be factors in many an issue. So let's consider the process of delving inward to find and change those inner roots to your life's real problems. The target. First step is to decide what issue you're dealing with. The mind is complex and your life contains many elements and facets. Best is to deal with one clear-cut issue at a time, although more may be involved with that one or somehow related, as you could discover later. From this point on, I'll presume you are using self-hypnosis for focus and ideomotor responses for specifics, a pendulum or finger responses, or even applied kinesiology movement, such that you can query your subconscious for yes or no answers. These techniques were explained in earlier issues and in my books and website. They are key prerequisites for this episode. Given that access and confidence on your part, you'll be able to uncover any degree of complexity in inner mechanisms. The timing. The second step is to query the subconscious whether this would be a good time to approach this particular issue. You may be looking into a problem you just aren't ready to deal with. And you'll know that on a deeper level. Remember, with ideomotor responses, you're not communicating with discarnate spirits or seeking out unknown items. You're only delving into your own subconscious. And that info is part of you and accessible. You aren't looking for advice from the subconscious. Just an indicator in the scheme of things that this issue is good to take on at this point. Finding all factors. Next is to ascertain what all mechanisms are involved in the problem. That's easily accomplished by querying down through the list, asking if suggestion and emulation and so forth is involved in this problematic area. Make note of the yes responses. Once that's determined, the fourth step is to explore each of the yes responses for more detail. Are there more than one element of, say, suggestion underlying this issue? If more than one, ask a series of questions to determine how many. More than 5? If yes. More than 10? If no. Fewer than 8? Work your way to the right answer. Arrive at the number of elements of each mechanism here. Once you're comfortable that each element involved has been identified, specificity is needed. For each point, find out when it first became a problem. For example, at what age did the first suggestion happen? Work out your age with yes/no questions. Who was involved who gave you the suggestion? Often this will be a parent, and quite often the initiating situation will come to mind. Each of these points, as you arrive at an understanding, you will realize the meaningful impact on you in that situation. These are, after all, your memories and your life. And that issue will have emotional connotations and meaning to you. Once you've clarified what you deem to be all mechanisms and their impact on your problem area, now's the time to begin to change. Changing the subconscious. Change is accomplished just like you would erase something from that slate, then write in the desired parcel of info. This process is called auto-suggestion. In this case, you are knowingly and confidently rewriting the contents of your subconscious. That's remarkably simple, actually, and each step is rather easy as well. But complexity grows according to the number of factors involved. The key is to fully identify each problem-generating element and dispel each of them separately. You say to yourself within your focused concentration, I see clearly that emulation is involved in my problem X, whatever it is. I dispel that mechanism. I release it and leave it in the past. I no longer need to emulate so-and-so. And now I can just be myself. Follow through with each factor, telling yourself specifically and pointedly, I dispel such and such a mechanism. I leave it in the past. It no longer has any use. And repeat the autosuggestion rewrite a couple of times a day with full focus and intent for a couple weeks. Be sensitive to your feelings. You'll know when it's time to move on to the next issue. Sample autosuggestion. To illustrate, I'll walk through a change I implemented on myself fairly early in the process. It was a health issue, one I'd suffered through since childhood, recurring colds. Growing up in Pennsylvania, back when winters hadn't been adjusted by climate change, I was forever catching cold. The flu, the virus, whatever it was, as they say, whatever was going around. By the time in life, in my 30s, when I started delving into health issues using this newfound, for me, query technique, I was still catching colds frequently. And here I was in balmy San Diego at the time. Using idiomotor responses to query my subconscious, I ran through the mechanisms behind recurring colds. I found positive responses for suggestion, motivation, and conflict. Negative for the others. Conflict was obvious. I wanted health but was getting illness. I wanted to feel good and felt miserable. Suggestion, as I specified it, included a series of explanations my mother had laid on me as a kid, from about age 2 onwards. Tom, if you get your feet wet, you're going to catch cold. Tom, if you sit in a draft, you'll get sick. Tom, don't let people cough or sneeze on you, as the germs will make you sick. You get the point, I guess. Suggestion has a powerful influence on a child. But capping it off was motivation. My mother rewarded me when I was sick. Special treatment, added attention. Later on, as I grew, I could stay home from school. Positive rewards for negative situations. Once I'd worked through all those issues and a few more, as I recall, that surfaced later, I eliminated the recurring colds, and I proceeded to jettison many another issue in health and many aspects of life. Many an issue. I hasten to emphasize that there are repercussions. that result from the release of inner negativity, a backlash of emotional turmoil. It will pass, but it's worth its own discussion, as you should be aware that the process of change flushes emotion out of the system. That's what we'll look at in part 9. See you there. Of those things we cover, nothing is more important than this: finding and changing inner root elements to outer problems. The subconscious contains a large, complex, often interwoven set of definitions, beliefs, and other intangible particles of information. In the life process, the whole of your psyche becomes woven into real events and relationships, invariably and reliably. To accomplish real improvement in life, in your health, your success, relationships, you have to delve inward to identify and release specific inner mechanisms. Once you've done that, the real life situation will revise in response. The inner culprits include, quickly, suggestion and emulation, identification, motivation and punishment, force and subtle force, a single traumatic experience, or struggle and conflict. The process of delving inward to find and change those inner roots to your life's real problems. First step is to decide what issue you're dealing with. The second step is to query the subconscious with ideomotor responses to ascertain what all mechanisms are involved in this problem. The fourth step is to explore each of the yes responses for more detail. Once you've clarified all mechanisms and their impact on your problem area, now's the time to begin to change. This process is called autosuggestion. You are knowingly and confidently rewriting the contents of your own subconscious. To fully identify each problem-generating element and dispel each of them separately. And repeat the autosuggestion rewrite a couple of times a day with full focus and intent for a couple weeks. This clip demos explorative techniques from The Essence of Reality, my first book, Psyche Exposed, my second, and my website. Refer to them for further details.